Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. It's Thursday, June the 2nd. Guess who's back? Who's back? Yes, your old dad's back. How are you doing, Sean? Sean Martin joining me today at Sean Martin TCW, Haggerty 10. You know the drill by now. How are you, Sean? You all good?
Not bad. All the better for seeing you, Tony.
Did you miss me? That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. Thanks very much. Good to be back. Now, as we do, always on the briefing, the housekeeping. You can see in the top of your screen and running along the bottom, the One Football app. Get downloading the One Football app, guys. It's the one-stop football shop for scores, news, lineups, transfer rumours, live streaming, match highlights, and much, much more. You can immerse yourself in the digital football world and have the best personal digital experience out there. It's a cracking app. I've downloaded it. It's really, really good. And we thank them for their sponsorship as well. Don't we, Sean?
Certainly do.
And also, you can see running along the bottom, you can enjoy a 30-day free trial. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a try. Celtic Way for free for 30 days and support top quality journalism covering the club that we all love. You know what to do by now. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Now, Sean, bit of a disappointment last night with Stevie Clark's Scotland squad. Scotland out of the World Cup, losing 3-1 to Ukraine in the World Cup playoff semi-final. Ukraine will advance to play Wales for the right to go to Qatar 2022. Now, Sean, I'm thinking about this, and the only positive from a Celtic perspective is now that none of the Scottish Celtic players will be going to the World Cup.
True. Is it a positive? I don't know.
I mean, I'm trying to be. It's a very thin silver line, isn't it? Because I know how Ange loves the fact that his players go and representing their country, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's a crushing disappointment for a lot of the Celtic players who maybe had their eyes on it. But I guess in terms of Ange, it's less players to go into a major tournament to worry about possibly getting injured, that kind of thing. That's what I was talking about. And also they can work on their fitness levels during that time.
They'll presumably be in Australia then. They'll be the Sydney Super Cup.
Yes, of course.
Which I'm sure was the one they were all wanting to go to anyway. But,
will
I
go to the Sydney Super Cup?
I don't see why not, unless it just gives them that time off, maybe. But if they're not going to the World Cup, I'd imagine they probably will go. But I can see where you're coming from, to be honest. Similar in the way that I said back in the last international break that although I thought Anthony Ralston should have been called up, it was actually a blessing for Celtic at the time that he probably that he wasn't. That said, what you said about Postecoglou there is also true. He's made a point of saying that while it might give him a wee bit of a headache in terms of who might get injured and all of that, ultimately he does like to see his players get international recognition, and he's managed at a World Cup, so he'll know. He'll have experienced something, especially the Scottish guys just won't have experienced, and he probably will have wanted them to get there. But from everybody else's point of view, not Ange Postecoglou and the staff, and not even the players, but the ones in the stands, realistically, no matter how much of a Scotland fan you may or may not be, you're probably, if you're thinking on it from a Celtic point of view, you're right, it is going to be it's fewer competitive games for them to get injured at that time in the season after an intense start to the next campaign.
Yeah, you're being selfish from a club perspective, aren't you? The likes of Taylor, Ralston, McGregor, and who's the other one? Sorry, that I'm missing there.
Turnbull.
Ralston. What did I say? Taylor, Turnbull, Ralston, McGregor. Yeah.
Taylor, Turnbull, Ralston, McGregor were in that squad. Plus, you had if you think the other Scots in the Celtic squad, the likes of James Forrest, for instance, if he got up ahead of steam, he might have been in there as well. You never know, but point blank, it's no Scots are going to the World Cup now, so it's a certain contingent of the Celtic squad that he won't have to worry about going to a World Cup.
Don't want to dwell on the performance, Sean, of Scotland. We're out, bottom line. That's how it goes. Disappointing.
Obviously, he's down under. Remember, he's thinking well. The silver lining extends a wee bit higher for him. He might get to see the main players, but
of course, I mean, it does beg the question that does he take a strong squad to Australia for the Super Cup? He now has that option, doesn't he? That's the thing.
He could almost treat it, and I think you might hear this later in the year. He might treat it almost like a second pre-season.
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I think in that sense, unless I'm thinking McGregor here needs a rest and won't get any other rest otherwise, then I think he probably will. It'll probably take a lot of them anyway. I would think. I think it'll only maybe be injuries that rule them out of the trip, even if he ends up not using, for instance, again McGregor for 90 minutes in all of the games, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now another thing I noticed, Sean, is the daily Cameron Carter-Vickers update. Yep. Now, Cameron Carter-Vickers has spoken whilst he's away in international duty with the USA side, and he's spoken highly of Ange, and he's also spoken about the need to leave Tottenham permanently now. And I think Celtic Twitter feed put everybody on red alert when they said good luck to our international Celts, and they had Cameron Carter-Vickers' name alongside others who were performing for their countries, respective countries last night. Now, it just seems to be, every time we talk, it seems to be inching closer, but I guess that's more positive vibes. We spoke about it last time I was on last week, and it just seemed to be things were moving along at a snail's pace, but it was positive. Again, that's positive because he said he's enjoying playing under Ange, who likes to play out from the back, which suits his style. Just said it's time to move from Tottenham permanently, and it's up to the clubs to thrash out a deal.
Aye, well, it's another weekly update that doesn't really take it forward much, does it? But it's interesting comments nonetheless. I think it was quoted in the Sun, I think.
Yes.
And a few things stood out to me. Probably the main things. One, that he specifically mentions kind of being sick of constant loan moves, even though he enjoyed them, and that he would like to settle somewhere for a few years. He specifically mentioned that. Two, that he really enjoyed being at Celtic, and crucially, as you mentioned, they're playing that type of football under Ange Postecoglou. And then three, that wherever he goes next has to be somewhere he'll be able to enjoy his football and get on with his manager, both of which he just said Celtic ticked the boxes for. So you're kind of reading between the lines there, maybe reading it wrongly, but because he also mentioned that it's not totally up to him that Celtic need to agree a deal with Tottenham. I wouldn't be over perturbed by that unless Tottenham start asking for a silly add-on, like 60% of the sell-on or something. Because there's already been talks like through the season when they done the loan deal or that kind of thing. So if that's, as I said to you when we spoke about it last week, if he has truly agreed personal terms, that to me is a bigger statement of intent than the club's agreeing terms, because that was the sticking point. I thought that would be the bit that might take the longest, the wages rather than the transfer fee. So I'm still very positive about it. I don't know any more than you do, but it certainly does sound positive. And I think the Celtic Twitter admin, I don't know if they're playing with people's emotions or if they're just being nice, but I did see that caused a minor kerfuffle. But they might just be being nice. They might just be technically he's not going back to Tottenham yet. So
my thoughts on these things, Sean, are always, see if you're happy, you're going to be handsomely rewarded.
Yeah,
and I think as you say, agreeing personal terms is a big thing. Because how many times have deals hit snags of players with Celtic that couldn't agree personal terms? I think that was a huge obstacle removed in any kind of deal being concluded. The fact that the player has actually agreed personal terms, and you are, the bottom line is you're only going to move from Celtic at this juncture for more money. You're going straight into the Champions League, the highest, club tournament that you can play in. And if you're playing for Celtic and you're a top player, then you're getting, as I say, remunerated vastly. So you're only going to lead, and you're competing for trophies and you're winning things, and you're on an upward trajectory, as I keep saying, with this manager.
Well, you spoke to Ramon Vega about that exact fact, because obviously he only spent half a season here, but not saying he regrets not staying, because he says that he wasn't offered a contract and stuff, but you get the impression when you read what you were speaking to him about, that he would have loved to have stayed and actually experienced the whole Celtic thing for a few years rather than just half a season. And his point to you was, you might get more money down south, you might get a move to the Premier League, whether it's an Everton, whether it's back to Bournemouth, all of that, but you will not get Champions League football because the top four are not going to come in for him. He will get Champions League football at Celtic. You're pointing out whether it's quite the same level of wages, and here you can't fault someone for going where the money is either.
No.
But whether it's quite the same level of wages or not, it's still a handsome wage that you'll be getting, and you'll be getting it to play in Champions League football with a manager that he says he likes playing under, a style of football he likes playing, teammates that he obviously enjoys being around because he went to Ibiza with them, and everything else. The box is ticked for everything else to me.
And I also say personal happiness comes into it. I banged on about that as well. See if you're happy and it's working, it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it.
Yep. The other box, he never mentioned this, and this was what made me wonder if the quotes that came out kind of early hours in the morning last night or whatever it was, were actually from live in the USA camp, or whether it was maybe taken from a couple of weeks ago when they spoke to him or whatever. Regardless, though, he didn't mention the international setup, which I found kind of odd because that's where he is now. Yeah. But you've got to remember that it's ticked that box for him as well. That's an international recall after 3 years. 4 if you want to go by international starts, but it's 3 when he was last on the field for the USA, which is something none of his spells with Stoke, Luton or Bournemouth in the EFL Championship managed to do, remember?
Yeah. Well, he's playing at high.
Speaking of, by the way, he got a full half for USA against Morocco.
But another point I would make there is Celtic can always resurrect a player's international dreams because they are competing for silverware. You're playing under intense pressure where the need to win is vast and it's great every week. And also, if you're winning the title, then you're showing yourself up as being a vital cog in that team. So I think players always see Celtic, as it's a viable option now for footballers because at this moment in time, you're now competing and playing in the Champions League. Celtic have secured that, but that's what every player wants to play, Sean. And there's only a few teams in England that can guarantee you that.
Mm-hmm. And the fact is, it is now a guarantee. This isn't like the last few years where it's if they can navigate the qualifiers. It is literally you're getting into the group stages. You will be playing Champions League football at least until December, and then see after that.
You're taking your club career to the highest possible level. It's now up to you to shine on that stage and use that platform. If you have designs on moving on from Celtic in the future, then so be it. That's the way of the world. Celtic fans accept that as well. But whilst you're at Celtic and you're playing in that tournament, you give your all and you compete with the best. And I think any player looking at Celtic right now, that's an enticing proposition to me from the outside looking in.
Oh, definitely. I mean, would you make of this, Charlie McGarvey's comment? Obviously, we don't know what has expressly been earmarked for Ange Postecoglou, and a lot of these things depend on outgoings as well. I'm not too worried about it, really.
No.
The Champions League money, even aside, Celtic are in a decent position. They showed in January that if there's players earmarked that he wants, they can go and get them. Now, obviously, the price is a different kettle of fish with Carter-Vickers and Jota compared to the January signings, but I'm still not overly worried that it will, like, for instance, just be those two. I don't think it will. I think they will reinforce in other areas as well. Maybe not to the 6 million mark, but I don't necessarily think it'll be loan signings either.
No, I don't think I think he might bring in one loan, if that. He might use that system, but I think Andy's want to bring in permanent players. He's trying to build something. I don't think there's short-termism in his thinking. I really don't.
There isn't, no.
I always think he's planning long-term. He's thinking, 2 and 3 years ahead.
You can see that by the contract expiry dates. When I done a thing we're going to come to on the website, a feature looking at the kind of fringe players and whether they should be kept or released or sold or loaned out. And I put together a graphic, quite a long graphic because of the amount of players there is. But in that, you kind of see that there is no short-termism in this squad because the contracts that end like this season and end the next season, with the exception, depending on how you view them, of Christopher Jullien, there's no key players that expire either this year or next year. They do. You could even count 2024 because you would think Turnbull, maybe by 2024, Joe Hart, will he still be the number one? You don't know. David Turnbull's the only other one that expires in 2024 where you could say he'll play a lot. He'll be a key player. You need to extend that. But until the rest of them, 2025 and 2026 is the future of the Celtic squad. They're all contracted down.
Long-termism, Sean, I think it's called.
It's long-term plan.
Touching on your article that you did, it's on the Celtic Way. You can put the link up, Sean. You spoke about those fringe players and their contracts. and very interesting article it was indeed, and the graphics are there. Sean loves a graphic. You can have a look at it, guys. It's pretty good stuff, but it backs up something that I said when Celtic never so much got rid of, but allowed Near Beaton and Tom Logic to leave. I said there had to be an element of ruthlessness about Ange to take Celtic to that next level. Now, you've touched upon that as well today. That is now we'll see the kind of ruthlessness of the manager trimming the fat off the squad and just saying, right, you're not the player I need to take me to the next level to make us Champions League competitive, that kind of thing. And you've mentioned a plethora of players. And the big surprise is Julian, isn't it?
Is that because I said keep him?
No, not at all.
Now, there's a comment here about Julian actually that kind of leads me on to a point from the feature. Patrick McLaughlin, do we need Julian off the wage bill before we can give Carter-Vickers the wage? I don't. Like, one, I don't know, but two, the point I've made in that feature where I've said keep Christopher Julian was kind of at least basically qualified by the phrase at least until Carter-Vickers is signed permanently. I've mentioned it on here before, but I'm just very conscious of a Craig Gordon, Fraser Forster, Vasilis Barkas type kind of transfer love triangle thing playing out again. And you think Carter-Vickers is signing, you let Julian go, and then you end up with neither. That's my kind of thinking with it. Patrick makes a fair point. Julian will be on a very good wage. Again, maybe being naive here, but I don't think that the state Celtic are in at the moment, they need to be overly perturbed about getting specifically Julian out the door before Carter-Vickers comes in. At the end of the day, the two of them were on the same playing staff last season, where I don't know the wage split with Tottenham, but regardless, they were.
I don't. I mean, again, I'm not privy to this, but I wouldn't think that one's dependent on the other. Let's put it that way. I have to say, I don't know. You look at Ange Postecoglou and you look at Chris Julian's situation, and he always banged on about when the opportunity arises, I'll throw him in, I'll give him some game time, and he didn't. Now, you can read into that what you want. It's up to Julian to make him force his way back into that side if he's willing to ride it out and see if he can dislodge Starfelt or Cameron Carter-Vickers on the assumption we signed Cameron Carter-Vickers. And I got back to it as well about all the kind of bleating, Sean, and moaning. And I guess Ange encourages his players to speak up and speak their mind, and he'll be happy about a player saying he's not playing. But he might be unhappy the fact that he's trying to build harmony in the dressing room, and that kind of thing can cause disharmony. And I'm not saying he'll get rid of him because of that, but it's certainly a factor, isn't it? When you're trying to build something, creating somebody's kind of taking pot shots from inside, and and if I'm Julian, I'm disappointed, but the only way you can get back into the team is to knuckle down and impress the manager, and well, Stephen Pert's agreeing that his comments before the last game, she's no way back from. The timing of the comments we thought was a bit odd, and we mentioned that at the time, didn't we, Sean?
Aye, but I mean, I don't necessarily think that a central defender out for a year who was previously a mainstay kind of mentioning that he doesn't like being on the sidelines is all that controversial. It was, as you say, the timing of it was odd, but what he actually said, that part of what he said anyway, I don't have a massive problem with. In terms of Ange Postecoglou, he's, like kind of said before in his book and stuff, that he won't ostracise or deliberately ostracise an unhappy player, that it's not what he's about, because then that negativity kind of feeds through other players. So I don't necessarily think based on that it's been deliberate. I think it has just been, one, the form of Carl Starfelt at left centre-back, where, lest we forget, Julian played, I've pointed this out before, but he might be right-footed, but Julian played left centre-back at Toulouse, so I thought that's maybe where he was going to come back in. But Carl Starfelt turned his season around. He started playing really well. I've also mentioned before that central defence is the one part of the team where Ange Postecoglou would rather not rotate. So it's hard for a central defender to get any game time. Ask Stephen Welsh about that. He played a lot in his first half of the season and very little in the second half. So I don't think it was necessarily, not that anybody's suggesting it is, but I don't think it was necessarily deliberately ostracising him because he was unhappy or anything. I just think it was very difficult for him to actually get any semblance of game time when he was fit. because the Wraith Rovers game is probably the only game where you could have thought, well, stick him in, based on what I'm saying about the central defenders not being rotated.
Yes, indeed. Now, you mentioned other players, Sean, in this piece, likes of Bolingoli, McConnell, Connor Hazard, Karamoko Dembele, these kind of guys. I mean, who do you see leaving, Sean? Do you see all those guys leaving, or do you think there's any way that they'll sign a new deal, or Celtic will keep any of them?
You never know, because with the Karamoko Dembele one, it is odd because Postecoglou talked really highly of him in pre-season. He then got injured. He was out for a good while, and then when he came back, it was pretty much for B team football. He got 28 minutes in total across the Dundee United and St Mirren games. Done all right, I thought, but then after that, Ange Postecoglou was asked several times in press conferences about his future, and without expressly saying he's not wanting to sign a new deal, that's kind of what the impression was. Then he was again not spotted anywhere near the first team after it in terms of matchday squads. So in that sense, you would imagine he's probably going, unless you hear otherwise. Celtic haven't announced anything like that, but they rarely do. But there are other guys there that just won't touch the first team, and that's a problem for them as well as Celtic, because there's guys go out on loan and do really well. You spoke to Kerr McInroy, former youth team captain. He seemed very realistic about the whole thing in terms of he's been out on loan. He's done really well, actually. Both his loan spells last season. He was good with Airdrie, really good with United. Ultimately, is he going to come back and add minutes to his resume in the first team? Probably not. So do you really want to put him in the B team at that point? Do you loan him out again, but you would need to renew his contract for another year to do so? There's all of these things to consider, as well as their own development. Sometimes I think for their own development as much as anything else, it's not worth staying at Celtic. That's not just players out of contract this summer, that includes players out of contract next summer as well. If they're under contract, obviously the chances are it might be another loan move rather than being released, because that would be a wee bit ruthless. But I still think that all of that comes into contention. Basically, the question for me is, are they going to add in to the first team? And a lot of these players aren't going to.
And another question, Sean, is would Dial B for Barkas? What do we do with Barkas?
Well, as I said in the start of that piece, and you'll remember last week, I got Alison to play a wee game of keep sell rather than duck goose. And for Barkas, it's sell, I think, isn't it? So
whoever wants to take him.
That's the caveat, isn't it? With players that are under contract, like Barkas, Ayeti, players like that, it is if there's a suitor. But I think that kind of goes without saying. And
do we cut our losses on that, Sean, and take what we can get for them? If there is a suitor?
I think maybe, because there's got to be a sense of realism in it as well. The value won't have gone up at Celtic. These players, it just won't have gone up. Celtic will have overpaid for them. At some point, there is a cut your losses type scenario that you encounter. There's a weird one for me with Osaze Urugide, because he's under contract till I think it's 2025. Should check my own graphic. And he's did well on loan in Belgium with Ostende, so they've kind of said publicly that they would like to keep him, but they think it might cost too much. Now, that question that I asked a minute ago, will he add anything to the first team? If the answer to that is going to be no, then again his value will just depreciate anyway.
Yeah.
So you either send him out on loan for another couple of years, maybe, or you maybe entertain the notion of accepting a cut price deal with quite a hefty sell-on fee in case he goes over there and does a Jack Hendry, that kind of thing. There's all these things you've got to measure up. It's not easy. The club don't have it easy in that sense, even though rightly they will get criticised for overpaying for a lot of these players if they let them go.
But I'm sure Ange Postecoglou will be all over those kind of things, Sean, won't he?
Yes, because apparently he's full charge of the football department, Dermot Desmond said in that interview. So, yes, I'd imagine he will be all over these things. But
and the
you know where I stand on that.
And the transfer window's open next week, Sean?
The 10th of June, I think it is, aye.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it was
next
the 10th.
Friday, is it?
I think so, yes. I think it's the 10th.
Yeah, 10th of June. That was what I had in my head. So that being the case, that's next Friday then, isn't it? Do you expect Celtic to do early business, Sean, like they did the last time?
I would hope so. I think that worked well in January. You saw the benefit of getting players in the door early. Obviously, the caveat without really having to say it is needs to be the right players and all that. But that's always the case, whether it's the first day of the window or the last. You get Carter-Vickers and Jota in the last day of the summer window. So you never know. I think it is important to do it early. Not as important when they not get any Champions League qualifiers, but I just think, given Ange Postecoglou's comments of ideally going to Austria with basically the squad that he's after, I think, yes, you want to see players in the door virtually the first weekend that the window opens.
Well, that's a week tomorrow. Friday, June the 10th, transfer window opens. Won't be a week tomorrow till we're back, Sean. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah,
Friday, June the 3rd. Same time, same back channel. I've enjoyed being back. Always enjoy your contribution, Sean. Thanks for the comments. Keep them coming, guys, on a regular basis. We enjoy them. We try and read as many out as we can and flash them up on the screen. You know what to do. 30-day free trial, guys. You know what to do. Hit that button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe for a 30-day free trial. Who wouldn't want that, Sean?
You can read my graphics for nothing. Can't say better than that.
Thanks a lot. Have a lovely day, guys. Speak to you tomorrow.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, Tony.